Hey Adrian, am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Oh,
And
great.
how can you hear me? Is
Yeah,
the loud and clear?
yeah, I'm clearly able to hear you. Yeah, sure. So, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great.
Yeah,
At least I'm trying to myself to tell that because I don't want to stress about the presentation. But but yeah,
yeah,
I'm
I
doing fine.
can really go a lot of hectic thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, can you just tell us brief about yourself? Like, how do you just got into the industry and just start with a basic introduction?
Yeah. So how to keep it brief? Well, in 2016, I started my own. Basically, in 2015, I was the crossroad. If I want to go into the VR, AR road or into the
Okay.
blockchain road, because I was hitting myself up that I missed the mobile revolution, the internet revolution, social media revolution, etc. And I saw the big potential in VR, AR, and also blockchain. But when I was reading more about the blockchain itself, then I started that. Okay, no, that's something that I need to get into. And in 2017, I was able to land my first full-time job as a smart contract developer, and the rest is just history. So I just was going from company to company, and writing some stuff for them. But in the meantime, I also always wanted to do something with the cybersecurity because that was something that I was fascinated by. And then I noticed so many different rug pulls, various hacks happening in the Ethereum space. And I thought to myself that, well, this is something that maybe I could also try to do. Maybe auditing some smart contracts. And in 2020, I started reading more about that, learning about that. And just at one point, I decided, okay, well, it's time just to start posting some not posting but writing to some companies and see where I can join, and that's how I got hired in as an auditor, and I was working as an auditor for a full year, and after that full year I joined Immunefi, and here I am.
Oh, that's, I mean, great. That's a really exciting journey from like VR, AI, to developer and then an auditor. I mean, lots of things you have done.
Yeah, I was always fascinated by the technology, and I really like reading about that, researching about different new techs, and just searching that new shiny new thing. But yeah, I really got fascinated about the VR. I'm still am.
Okay.
And the blockchain was just an obvious choice to me. That I just saw that this is gonna be big, and it's gonna probably also maybe not consume, but integrate with VR at some point. So maybe in a few years, I will also be doing some VR stuff.
Oh, that's great. I mean, quite exciting. About
Yeah, and
yeah.
to be honest, my mentor and my friend at the time, because I was talking to him, I really like VR and game stuff, and I'm really fascinated about that. But also, look at that blockchain stuff, at the Bitcoin. Oh, this is amazing. And but I don't know what to choose because I wanted to do that and that. And he said, okay, Adrian, listen to me. You have only one lifetime, and you can only specialize in one thing.
Yes.
Okay, but how can I choose that? Well, think about it that way. What would make you the most proud to being written in your tombstone when you die? Would it be a VR developer that he was an amazing VR developer, developed something amazing, or was it a blockchain developer and he helped move that technology forward? I was, well, that's a hard question. And I gave it a couple of days of thought, and then I knew that, yeah, the blockchain was the way.
No, I mean, you just figure out like I need to break things
Yeah,
about there. Yeah, that's great. That's uh,
damn, that mic is almost as big as my face.
that's a really, I mean, attractive cup. I would say.
Yeah, I got it. I got it from my wife a few years back. So
That's great. So I think we are good to go, right? Or we just is it rolling down?
yes, let me try share my screen.
Please.
Yeah, let's just share entire screen. And can you see my screen? Can you see my presentation?
Yeah, you can clearly see.
Okay, awesome.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I am in the full screen mode, so I won't see any question from the chat. So if anything is being asked, please interrupt me so I can answer that question. So let's start. So as you may have heard, my name is Adrian Hetman. And today we'll be talking about, we're trying to answer the question, are smart contracts haunted? We'll go through the most popular smart contract vulnerabilities found in the wild that are still happening, that smart contract developers are still making. And the lists and the categories are also made based on the bugs that we receive on Immunefi. So agenda for today, well, I will do a short intro about myself. Well, I actually did that already, but I will talk more about my work at Immunefi. Then we'll switch to the most interesting stuff about the most common smart contract vulnerabilities. I will give you some examples, and at the end, in the outro, I will just tell you about some cool stuff that we do at Immunefi. So, as you know, my name is Adrian Hetman. I'm a DeFi triager at Immunefi. And if you didn't understand what I just told you, and you didn't understand sentence DeFi triager at Immunefi, let me help you. Immunefi is a bug bounty platform that has over 250 projects on it. And what does it mean is that whenever you just browse through the code for fun, as a smart contract developer or as an auditor or Web3 white hat, and you notice a bug in a code base, and that bug is valid, and you decide not to exploit the vulnerability yourself, only to responsibly disclose it, you do it through Immunefi. We receive the report. I myself, as a DeFi triager, I verify the report from a technical standpoint, then escalate it to the client, and if everything is all right with the bug, meaning that it is valid and that there's funds at risk, maybe not always, but that's one thing to look for, then you get paid for that. Yes, you get we maybe not we, but our clients projects pay you for finding bugs in their protocol, in their DeFi application, and we pay. We go from $500 or $1,000, which is okay, but we have bounties up to $10 million. Yep, we have actually right now two bug bounties on our platform, one from MakerDAO, another one from Wormhole, that can pay up to $10 million when you find a critical vulnerability in there. And if you're thinking, okay, that's maybe just a PR stunt, nope, that's this isn't just a PR stunt, because we actually helped to get hackers paid over a few $1 million already in one bounty payout. For example, Polygon twice paid our white hats $2 million in rewards. And that is pretty awesome if you tell me. And apart from working as a triager, I also do some content creation for Immunefi. You may notice some various Twitter threads on Immunefi account. That's me. And also, if you read some of the bug fix reviews on Medium page, or some explainers about, for example, signatures or layer 2 technologies, that's also been written by me. And as I said in previous years, I work as an auditor and as a smart contract developer. But enough about me. I know some kind of a person just to talk about me. Let's jump into the what you really came here for. Let's talk about the common smart contracts vulnerabilities. I gave three categories: unsafe external calls, usage of spot price, and authentication issues. The unsafe external calls really incorporates a couple of the issues like re-entrancy calls, or for example, the strength of the implementation contract of a proxy. Usage of a spot price. It also incorporates a few vulnerabilities, but mostly it's talk about using of the spot price and what harm can it do to you. And with authentication issues, I just show some examples of missing modifiers or missing verification of the color. And all of the examples that I'm going to talk about are taken straight from the bugs that we receive on Immunefi and that people actually get paid for. And remember, these bugs are still in many code bases, so listen carefully, because you, at the end, if you understand everything and you start digging for bugs, and you may find any of these bugs probably in some of our projects and get paid. So, as I said, there are multiple types of unsafe external calls, but let's first start what external call really is. Well, it's a call to a third-party address that we do not control, meaning that whenever a smart contract has a function, for example, withdraw, where you can either submit an address to that function, or it takes the caller of that function and, for example, sends token to that address, well, that actually making an external call, because the logic, the workflow goes from the smart contract itself to a third-party address. And smart contract, basically, when something like that happens, smart contracts gives up control in such a way that we don't always know what's going to happen when, for example, certain tokens with callbacks reach out a certain address. So basically, if the recipient is controlled by an attacker, every external call is potentially dangerous, because the attacker may be able to force your contract to transition into undefined state. And one of such undefined states in external calls attack is our old time favorite bug, re-entrancy attack. Basically, it's an attack where a malicious user recursively calls a vulnerable function to steal funds. But how that would work? Well, let's take that withdraw function, which I talked already about. So let's say that we deposited some Ether into smart contract, for example, into escrow, and multiple other people also did that. And the escrow keeps track of who deposited and how much money they deposited in Ether. But you decided, okay, I need my money back right now, so there is a withdraw function where you can withdraw after some time. And in that withdraw function, we check how much money you are owed, and we send Ether to you, and at the end we update the balances. Seems simple, right? Well, if you've been writing some Solidity code, you may know the issue here that whenever a smart contract is called and it receives an Ether, the fallback or receive function are called automatically, meaning that we can act upon when we receive Ether. And in that case, we could, for example, give a malicious contract such logic that whenever it receives Ether, we call the withdraw function again and again and again and again. And we could do that, and we could drain the whole contract, because after each call happens, we can call the withdraw again, and the balances are only updated after all the calls happen. And that's why we always recommend in situations like this, checks FX interaction pattern. And the same issue that I talked about was found in the DAO in 2016, and that's what that was the main reason, and apart of course from the millions of installment funds that were when the Ethereum did a hard fork. And here's a first example of such a re-entrancy. It was taken from an NFT project. I cannot say which one because they don't want to go public, but I will give you a few seconds just to look at the code, and I will explain the vulnerability here in a minute. By the way, can you hear me all right? Okay, so the exact vulnerability here is exactly the same that I just described, meaning that we read some information here, we calculate the pending variable, basically how much shares is owned to the user. We safely transfer those tokens to the caller, and then we update the user reward debt, which is also used to calculate the pending. And don't be fooled by the name of the safe token transfer, because it's nothing safe in that function, because what really is happening is that that project use wrap ether as a token, but when we were sending tokens back, we weren't sending wrap ether. The project was unwrapping ether and sending plain ether back. So the exact same thing happened as with the DAO hack. Basically, anybody could create a malicious contract that upon receiving ether just calls harvest again and again and again just to drain the contract. And White Hat, who reported that, received 15K for reporting that back. And when you look at the code, it's quite obvious what you can do. Here's the explanation, what I just told you about. I will let you read it. Okay, moving on. The next type of vulnerability. But before I go, let me just check. Yes, everything is right, because I didn't want to talk just to myself, because I know this presentation. Okay, initialized proxy bug. This is one of my favorite bugs because I really like digging into it, and I have a blast writing one article for that exact bug. So, but before we go into bug itself, let me explain to you what a proxy is. Well, a proxy is such a smart contract that redirects all the calls to an implementation contract. So basically, the proxy itself has an address of an implementation contract that it redirects all the calls to. But you might ask, why do we need that? Well, in a blockchain, in Ethereum, whenever every transaction that goes into Ethereum, every code that goes into Ethereum is immutable, meaning that we cannot change it after it happens. And the same goes for the smart contracts that we deployed to the Ethereum. We cannot change it afterwards, which is generally great perk of a blockchain. But it also has its consequences. For example, when there is a bug in your code, you cannot easily upgrade it. You cannot just write a patch and just hit publish and your smart contract will be upgraded. That's not Web 2. So people were starting to think how we can make smart contracts upgradable. In a case that when the bugs happen, we can simply change the implementation of our contract and fix the logic that is vulnerable. And that's how upgradable proxy pattern came to life. There are multiple types of the proxy pattern, but I will talk about them in a minute. But in general, the uninitialized proxy bug means that this bug can lead to self-destruction of the implementation contract, which could render the proxy contract useless, meaning that whenever we call a proxy, it will just hit nothing because implementation is destroyed. But this vulnerability only occurs in such proxy upgradable patterns where the logic of upgrading the implementation resides in the implementation itself. But how that works and how you can destroy the contract, let me explain that. But first, we need to understand delegate call. And so, as I said previously, a proxy contract redirects all the calls it received an implementation contract whose address is stored in the contracts in the proxy contract storage. Meaning, when we look at this image, we see that yes, proxy contract can have its own code, but what's really important is the storage, because we are interested in the logic of the implementation contract, but we want to keep all the state changes into the storage of the proxy contract. But why do we want to do that? Well, when we switch implementations, we also want to keep all the history of the smart contract interaction somewhere. And when we would keep everything in the implementation contract, and then when we switch implementations, then we lose all of that history. That's why we are using delegate call. Delegate call is executing the code of the contract B in the context of the contract A, meaning that we just take the implementation, the logic of the contract B, and applied it to the storage of the contract A. So all the changes, for example, function that changes X from 5 to 10, that change from 5 to 10 will be reflected in the contract A, our proxy, not in the implementation contract itself. There is also one important thing to know before I move on, the self-destruct opcode, because we need to somehow be able to destroy the contract. So how do we do that? Well, the Ethereum has an opcode called self-destruct. When we call self-destruct, the code of the smart contract is emptied, and all the Ethereum, all the balance of Ethereum that was stored in that contract is sent to given recipient that we decide to send to. So if, for example, let's say a contract A has a function called self-destruct that calls self-destruct, then after the transaction finishes, we won't be able to call that contract because it's no longer there. Keep that in mind because it will be important. And let's now move to our first, just glancing at the time. Okay, still plenty of time to talk. The first example is OpenZeppelin UUPS initialized proxy bug. Before I dive into that, let me first tell you about the two most popular proxy upgradable patterns. The first one is transparent proxy pattern, and second one is universal upgradable proxy structure, I believe. The UUPS shorthand easily. I always struggle to remember the whole name of it, but yeah, there is an TPP proxy pattern and there is UUPS proxy pattern. The transparent proxy pattern is such a proxy pattern where all the logic of upgrading the implementation contract is in the proxy itself. On the other hand, in the UUPS, all the logic of the implementation contract, of upgrading the implementation contract, is in the implementation itself. So, and proxy just redirects all the calls to the implementation contract and acts as a storage of the implementation contract itself. With the transparent proxy pattern, again, as a reminder, the logic of upgrading the contracts is in the proxy itself. So in that case, if we would destroy the implementation contract of a transparent proxy, then it would just cause a simple DOS because we still would be able to upgrade our implementation afterwards, because all the logic of upgrading is in the proxy itself. That's not the case with the UUPS. And that's what was found in the OpenZeppelin implementation of UUPS that was submitted through Immunefi last year. So the issue was that, let me also first talk about the initialize function, because you may not know this, but we have a normal constructor and we also have an initialize function. But why do we need an initialize function? Well, we go back to this image. Whenever we deploy a contract, the constructor code logic is run automatically, and we usually use it to initialize the initial contract state. With a proxy, that's okay. But when we, for example, want to initialize some states of the implementation contract, we cannot rely on the constructor because we are using proxy. And all the changes of the constructor changes would be reflected in the implementation contract storage, not in the proxy. So just to mitigate this, we need to call a special function, initialize, but it can be called anything, init, initialize, or whatever, that we need to call it through proxy to initialize the initial values that we want the implementation contract to have. And when we do that through delegate call, that means that we take just the logic of the implementation contract and reflect it in the storage itself. But what happens if we call implementation contract itself and call initialize? Well, it turns out that most of the implementations haven't run initialize on the implementation contract itself. And you might think, okay, why is that's a problem? Because we have all the calls coming through the proxy. Well, if you call a proxy, yes, everything will be working fine. The initialization will be reflected there. But but when it comes to the UUPS proxy, as you remember, all the upgrade logic and also such upgrade logic contains delegate calls is inside the implementation. So just calling initialize, we automatically become an owner of the implementation contract. And as an owner, we can make a call to upgrade the implementation contract from the implementation itself. And we can upgrade it through a function called upgrade to end call. And that function upgrades the logic and also makes a delegate call to the new implementation running any function that we want. And that function can be a self-destruct. So actually what could happen is that we could self-destruct the implementation contract and render the proxy useless, because whenever people will call the proxy, there won't be any implementation to take the logic from. And we couldn't upgrade the proxy because the upgrade logic was in the implementation itself. And White Hat got, I believe, 25K for disclosing this bug through Immunefi, but I'm not certain about that. So I will need to go back and confirm that. Here's all the steps that the attacker would need to take. Basically, what I just told you about. So take a minute, read it through, and I will move on in a second. And remember, the slides of this presentation will be shared afterwards. So if you don't manage to read it all through, don't worry, slides will be shared with you. Okay, moving on. We actually got a very similar submission for the same issue, but not found in the OpenZeppelin UUPS implementation, but in a proxy that the proxy that also uses similar pattern to the UPS, meaning that all the upgrade logic is in the implementation contract. But what's cool about this find is that first, the White Hats got 200K bounty for disclosing that. And the second coolest thing is that they found this issue just by inspecting the bytecode of the contract, because the implementation contracts weren't verified on Etherscan. And how they did it? Well, we have an awesome article that I wrote last year just about that. And you can learn more about the proxies itself, about the what are the cons and pros of each proxy pattern. And I highly encourage you just to go over this article and read it. Okay, now we're going to the second category, spot price usage. But before we we talk about the spot price usage, let's first talk about the price oracles and what they are. Well, the price oracle is a tool used to view the price information of a given asset. We mostly use a price oracle just to knowing what is the current Ether price. For example, in DAI or in any other token that we're interested in. And there are two major types of oracles. There is an on-chain oracle and there is an off-chain oracle. And the off-chain oracles for example, a Chainlink. Chainlinks is a network of trusted verifiers and nodes that gives you an update. Gives you an information whenever called upon about the current price or any other information that you're interested in. The main issue is that it doesn't contain all the information about all the tokens. So whenever we are interested in a certain token that isn't listed in the Chainlink, we can use on-chain oracle, meaning that we rely on a constant products AMMs like Uniswap version 2 or version 3 or Balancer or any other AMM, like for example SushiSwap or PancakeSwap, etc., etc. And how do we get that price? Well, there's multiple ways to get that price. The most common and safe one is using a TWAP, meaning that's a time-weighted average price, meaning that we just take an average, for example, in the 5-minute or 5-hour window, and we check all the price fluctuation, and we just make an average out of that. But the second way of taking the price is just checking the current ratio of the two tokens. And basically that's how we also take the TWAP. We check the ratio of the two tokens. For example, if DAI ratio gives us the current price of an Ether. But if we check it that way, that we check the current price, the current ratio of the two tokens, well, that ratio, current ratio, can be changed instantly. How? By usage of flash loans. Flash loans are a way to borrow a large amount of money from lending protocols like Aave or Bento Box, and the borrower pays a certain fee at the end. So, for example, you could borrow a 40 million DAI. But the caveat is that you need to return all that money at the end of the transaction that you just took that money. If you don't do that, the transaction will be reverted. And the flash loans are mostly used for some arbitration purposes, etc. But they can also be used to manipulate the pools of AMMs, and thus manipulating the ratio. And by manipulating the ratio, you manipulate the price. So one of such examples, the recent one, was for the Yearn.Finance, when they use a spot price of an USDT. USDT is a stablecoin that is pegged to $1. The main issue here with the Yearn.Finance is, I just want to highlight multiple things with that example. First, the white hat got $200 in bounty for disclosing this bug. The other thing is that Yearn, even though it's been in the market for a couple of years, and now it has one of the most experienced developer teams, mistakes like that still can happen. And that's why you need a bug bounty program, just to catch them in time before the bad guys do. So the issue here was that we have a withdraw function in a strategy. Basically, the issue was in all single-sided balancer strategies for in the Yearn.Finance, but the only one to be exploited was of the USD, was the one that holds the USDT. And why that one? Well, because from the Bento box you could borrow up to 41 million worth of Yearn.Finance USDT tokens. And by withdrawing all of that, we liquidate the position, and you go and you basically need to inside this example, the Yearn.Finance goes through all the strategies, different strategies that it has in the withdrawal queue, and empties them by one. And at one point, we hit the strategy, the vulnerable one. And when the strategies see that it doesn't have enough money in the strategy itself, it burns their LP token share that has in the USDT pool, just to get enough money. But it doesn't check the current price of the USDT. So what can happen? Well, using flash loans, an attacker could manipulate the pool of the USDT and DAI and change the ratio. And by changing the ratio, you change the price of the spot price. So how the attack went through? Well, we will first need to borrow all the available IV USDT from Bento box, and we also flash loan a lot of DAI. We use that DAI to buy USDT at balancer to imbalance the pool, and then in the first step we withdraw from the vault itself. And the withdrawal goes through different strategies, hitting the one that we really want to. And that strategy sells their LP tokens, meaning that when you sell your LP token, you get the proportion of what you invested. But if the pool is highly imbalanced, that there is a small amount of USDT and very high amount of DAI, when you're not burning, but you're selling LP tokens, you need to sell much higher amount of those tokens just to get the USDT amount that you really want. And that's what happens. The strategies burn a lot of more LP tokens that it needs to. Thus, making the pool slightly less in balance, and we can come back and buy DAI back with our USDT. But as the pool is slightly more balanced, our USDT buying power is slightly more. So that means that we can buy way more of the DAI than we originally put in. We deposit back all the USDT back to the Yearn vault. We repay the flash loan, and we left with couple millions of assets at our hands that we just stolen. And again, for this bug, and this is the perfect example of a spot price usage and what can go wrong with that. A hacker got 200K, and we are still receiving some valid submissions for a spot price usage. The next example is for Enzyme Finance. I won't go much into details about that one because we have a bug fix review written about it. But what really is important is that price. Sorry, not the price, this function, which basically calculates the price of a token based on the balance of that token. Thus, taking the, maybe not using the spot price, but what's really interesting is that there was one token which you can manipulate the balance of. How? Well, but let me first explain what an Enzyme Finance is. It allows users and investors to create and invest in various funds. When we want to invest in a fund, we need to send the underlying asset of the fund to the vault. In return, users get shares that represent their part in the fund. But if there was a way to manipulate the price of a share that we're about to get and make that share less expensive, cheaper, we could get more shares of it. And at the end, we could later on balance back the share price and sell those shares at a higher price in the market. And Enzyme Finance had one fund that was vulnerable to this attack because the underlying asset, idle token, had a flash loan functionality, meaning that we could flash loan the idle tokens from the token itself. But when you flash loan a lot of money, you manipulate the current balance of that token, meaning that we could manipulate the tot NAV. And by manipulating that, we can make the price a lot of cheaper. Meaning that we can manipulate the share, the price share, and later on we could redeem the shares later on for the profit. But the whole issue is well described in the bug fix review, where we go into the details and explain what needs to be called in what order, because that one was quite complex to go into such details in this presentation. And the white hat got around 90K for that. Okay, lack of authentication, the last one. We're getting to the end. So I will just leave it at this because I believe it doesn't need any more explanation. Yes, the project had an on-pause function without any modifiers. So whenever a project decides to pause a contract because it finds some issue with it, anybody can just call an unpause and do whatever they want to, because there was missing only owner modifier here. And White Hat got $1,000 for that. And we still receive some missing modifiers issue on the Immunefi. The next one is a little bit more interesting. We have two functions. We have cancelOrder, which basically takes the different arguments, hash them together, creates a hash of them, and marks the order of that. It marks that order as cancelled. Sounds fine, right? But when we look at the match order, so for example, when a seller wants to finally make a sell for their NFT, then they need to provide all the signatures and also all the arguments for the addresses, for the amounts, etc. And that we hash them together. I simplified the code here, and we also check if the current order was cancelled. I mean, we check that if it is live. But what an attacker can do, it can wait in a mempool, basically checking every pending transaction on Ethereum. If they see a match order, well, they can just front run that transaction and submit cancel order and take all the arguments that we had in the match order, cancel that order, and when that function goes through, it will just fail at this, and the seller will just lose money. Maybe not lose money. I said it wrong. They will lose gas, and they won't be able to match orders anymore. And what the project could do in that case is just simply check if the caller of the cancel order is also the owner of the order itself. But they didn't do that, and anybody could call cancel order. Okay. And for that bug, I believe the white hat got paid $2,000, if I remember correctly. It was also simplified. So, as we went through various examples of the most popular smart contracts bugs, I have just one question for you. Who wants to become a Web3 hacker? Because it can be really profitable to be one and to find bugs on Immunefi. If you just stick to the bugs that I just showed you, you will be able to probably find some bugs in the current projects and get some sweet bounties out of them. But if you are just starting and you don't know where to start and how to become one, what to learn, well, we have an awesome guide written by Sleepy, which will also present at this conference. In that guide, we go really deep into what you need to learn in what order, and this just focuses on the security side of the blockchain. We also you will also need a solidity knowledge, but you don't need to be a developer. But if you are a developer and you want to switch to being a security researcher of Web3, the Web3 smart contracts, well, that's also a guide for you. So if you like this presentation, here are some socials that you can follow me. On Twitter, I'm mostly active on Twitter, where I share various threads explaining different things, or just reshare some cool links for you to learn from. Immunefi also runs Immunefi School, where we share all the cool reports, all the cool tutorials for all the people that are just starting or are more experienced. You can also check our Medium page. And at the end, there are two bug fix reviews from the Polygon bounties that I talked at the beginning, where we paid 2.2 in a bounty to one hacker and 2 million bounty to another one. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me stop sharing my screen. Regarding the authentication also, as I noticed in the private chat, there was also some issues where the project, those issues were in the white, but also we received similar issues where the burn function were public, meaning that you could burn tokens from anybody else. And that's it. Just wanted to mention that because I forgot.
Yeah, that was quite a very interesting talk, I would say. Like we covered a lot of information regarding Web3 security. So I think Razor would like to join. Yeah, Razor, please.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, yeah, thank you so much, Adrian. This was such an amazing talk, and yes, so many cool bugs we can say they are there, and some are there which we can say very dumb ones, right? We see more often rolling on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
that's a
Because
very big, yeah.
the bugs that I presented are the most popular ones that we see on the Immunefi. That in terms of the reports that we get, we also get a lot regarding some signatures mishandling, like replay signatures attacks, etc. But those are more complicated to present in such a presentation. But yeah, there's a lot of various bugs that are still, even if they are known, and they are still repeated across various projects and DeFi protocols.
Sure. Yep, that's the thing. And yes, we have one question, I guess. Yes. So Vagela has asked, right? If we have to do a time clock and multi-signature wallet in one contract, so is this good for security purpose? I guess it was something to your talk regarding I don't know, proxy or something. Yeah.
What is the question again?
So he has asked if we have to do time clock and multi-signature wallet in one contract. So is this good for security purpose?
So that's one way of, for example, scheduling an upgrades. Because yes, when we have an upgradable proxy, well, I as a user, even I can, for example, trust the creators of the contracts. I don't know, for example, if their keys are gonna be stolen or something like that, and suddenly in one transaction the implementation contract gets switched to a malicious one, and suddenly I lose all my money. One way to prevent that, or at least gives a heads up on any upcoming proxy upgrades, is using a time lock, where we can just say, okay, in 2 or 4 days, or even 7 days, or even longer, there will be an upgrade. And you can see that upgrade was gonna change here, and you have appropriate time just to respond to that, meaning that I can either withdraw because I don't like it and I decided to quit the protocol, or I just check it and say, okay, it's fine, I don't need to worry. And by using a multi-sig, that means that whenever such schedule upgrade is happening, you don't need one admin, you need multiple people signing the upgrade. So whenever, even if one admin gets their key stolen, I mean private key stolen, you don't need to worry that the whole protocol will just go bust.
Yep,
I
that's
hope
true.
I hope I answered the question.
Right. I guess he got the answer. I'm not sure whether he's still there. But yes, I have 2 more questions from my side as well. So one more thing
Ask
that
away.
I've been yeah. So I've been studying about this. Another very cool, I can say, trick or implementation is called as the metamorphic contracts, right? Where the code can switch on to the same address. So it's like we have a cell struct, in a contract. You destroy this onto the address, and the factory, the metamorphic factory, will deploy the same, like with a different logic, you can say different function onto the same address. So that's a very cool trick we have, right?
Yeah.
So don't you think, right? Like in order to spread awareness, right? Uh, let's say I'm a non-technical user, right? I'm trying to interact with a protocol. Like, how, would be some tips and tricks that you would be telling me to consider before interacting with the protocol? Like, let's say, don't interact with protocols where we have self-destruct enabled, right? Uh, all kind of stuff. So, what is your recommendation?
So I would mostly rely on the community. If I would be a non-technical person, just seeing some cool project that some of my friends are sharing me about, well, then I would just read about any news about them, if they were hacked before or not. Maybe just read some blog posts about them, because you can find some summaries about the project in really readable fashion for a normal human being that is not a developer. And even if that's not enough, I would just ask about in various Discord channels if they think that project is safe, if there's anything to worry about. And just after a while, after gathering all the information, if no red alerts are raised to you, then I would say, yeah, that's a good thing. But only, talking about only for a non-technical person that doesn't even understand what a self-destruct is. But for a more technical savvy people, I would say, yeah, you could, of course, verify the contract yourself, go through the code, but that's a very mundane and difficult task to do, and nobody has time to that. To do that, but I will just read the
Right.
audit reports, check if the project was audited, and that also applies to a non-technical person. Just check if the project was audited and by which company, if that company is just a no-name company or a respectable company. Because if I would see audit that says, okay, yeah, this project is cool, and I look at the audit report itself and it only checked two things, then I would say probably this audit report is bullshit. Then I could probably be worried about investing in that. So yeah, those are the various things that you could do. But I believe that asking in various DeFi and DAO communities about certain projects, even if there are some dumb questions, people in DeFi space are really there to help you. We have really awesome communities, and you don't need to feel embarrassed of asking some simple questions, because any one of us was at that point that we ask some stupid questions. Now we ask some more interesting stupid
Right,
questions,
right,
but
right.
yeah.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, so that true answer that we are constantly evolving, right? Day by day, working on ourselves, and it's like something is new into Web3, right? New protocols, new security, lot many things are going on. And yeah, so somebody, Davis has asked, right? When you mentioned about your blog post regarding the UUPS proxy concepts, so he's asking about that post, right?
Yeah,
So he can
let me
probably read
just
about that.
where how can I paste it here? I'll just
Uh,
paste it in
uh,
the private chat
okay,
so you guys
yeah, you can please do it.
send it over.
Uh, uh,
And remember,
it down.
in the
Uh,
in for the RazorSec channel, on the Discord channel, I will share the slides soon after we end here.
for sure, for sure. So everyone into the community, we are collecting all the resources. We'll share you all those at the end of the talk or at the end of the event day. So yep, they all will
Yeah.
be shared with you. Not it. Right. So let me check. Do we have any other question? Not. One more thing. I just want to. Uh, sorry, you have
You're
covered
breaking.
about the spot
You're
prices as well, right? Okay.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
razors like you
Is it
breaking up a
fine?
little bit.
Okay. Is it fine now?
Now, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I was talking about yeah, the spot prices, right, that you have covered, right? Kind of a
Mm-hmm.
technical question. So I was working like kind of researching on the onto the same topic. So we usually like it's like in most of the protocols, like how the way we calculate prices uh,
Mm-hmm.
for the LP token itself, right? For the pair itself, not the individual token, for the pair itself. It's a very simple
Mm-hmm.
technique or trick we can say. It's like multiplying the reserves with the individual prices, right? It's like R0 with P0, adding to R1
Mm-hmm.
with P1. It's like individual reserves with individual prices and adding to the like for both of the tokens, right, that we have in the pool, right? So it's a very
Mm-hmm.
simple you can say method technique that most of the protocols uses, but that is very much vulnerable to flash loans, right? Because
Yeah.
talking about the constant product AMMs that we have, which relies on the simple curve that when you multiply x into y is equal to a k constant. So but most of the time developers and the team forget that these ratios are supposed to be changed, right? For a trade, it's not like these R0 and R1 values after before and after a trade will remain the constant, right?
Yeah.
It's not like that. These prices can fluctuate as well. So that's when I figured out there's a much better approach followed by or you can say implemented by Alpha Finance. So now they are actually focused on the constant, which we know that even before and after the trade, that constant will remain the constant, right? Will stay the constant value, not depending upon the
Yeah.
individual prices and shares. So yeah, so that is one thing that I just wanted to add, like as you covered spot prices,
Sure.
right? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, the main approach that I'm not saying that everybody should do that. It's still
Mhm.
protocol dependent, and
Right.
if you think that any other approach is better for your use case, as all means,
Mhm.
just do whatever you think is a proper one, but get it
Mhm.
audited.
Mhm.
But in most cases, I think using a TWAP, meaning the
Mhm.
average
Okay.
price over a certain period of time,
Mhm.
is a good use, because
Mhm.
unless you're on some arbiter that
Mhm.
relies on the current ratio, the current even slightest changes of the prices, for example,
Mhm.
taking price in 1 hour window won't do much to you.
Mhm.
Of course, it has its downsides. For example, when a protocol really, for example, not the protocol, but the token really tanks down, then well, you won't get the price update in 1 hour. But
Mhm.
still, I believe it's the most safe way to get the current price. And
Mhm.
of course, apart, we just talking about the on-chain oracles. If
Mhm.
for you, if for you, your use case, and you're only
Mhm.
dealing with, for example, a well-known tokens, you can rely on the chain link,
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
don't need to
That
worry
is true as
about
well.
yeah,
Right.
and you don't need to worry about manipulating the price on the chain
Mhm.
link, because that's, I
Mhm.
believe, I don't want to say impossible, because everything is possible at some point of time, but nearly impossible.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Very true. And yeah, with that, I guess most of my questions are done, and I guess we don't have any other question from the users, viewers. We have, I guess,
Unless I think either I explain things really clear, or
yeah.
people don't know what to ask about. Either
Please,
way,
yeah. No, no, it was a really amazing talk. It was completely straightforward and very technical, deep diving into the straight into the vulnerabilities. That's what I guess everyone was looking forward to have the practical demonstration of what is the bug and how how to actually find that out, and what like how the life of triager is there at Immunefi, right? What are the different things you are
Yeah.
supposed to deal with, all that stuff, right?
And remember, we really strive to handling the report that we get in the to be in freezing touch with the reporter within 10 minutes, and later on deciding whether to escalate or ask for information within the next 30 minutes. So we're really on the tight spot schedule when dealing with that stuff. And sometimes we get such reports that could also be like a doctoral thesis. They are just so well written. And sometimes there are so simple bugs, like for example with the Polygon one, that you don't need a lot of explanation because, well, it's really clear. The same thing with the redactor cartel. The issue was that they didn't use OpenZeppelin's implementation of the ERC20 approve, and basically you could take approval of someone else and use that to drain the protocol. So yeah.
Yep.
And the bug was really easy, but you could drain the protocol, and that also was critical one. And also, if you check, for example, the first Polygon bug that got paid $2 million was a really complicated one. You really need to understand the Polygon. You need to understand the encoding methods of certain functions, etc. And when I was reading that, it was just, what am I reading?
Right.
But yeah, I'm just checking on one screen on one monitor. I'm just reading the bug report on the other one. I'm just Googling the new stuff. Okay, I think I get it. I get it. Do I get it? Yes, I get it. Okay, that's really critical. That's great.
Right, got it. Yes. And somebody is asking, like, Jean is asking how to do a proof of, I guess he's asking about proof of concept, like to show the vulnerability if someone has to report it. Yep.
Actually, we have another article for that. Let me just find it. POC bug reads that you could also share with the audience. Basically, a proof of concept is a runnable piece of code, a script that works on a mainnet fork, meaning that we do not test, and you shouldn't test your exploits on a test network or on a live network. You should always do that on a fork, meaning locally. And you can use either Truffle, either Hardhat, or Brownie, or any other way to showcase that the code is really vulnerable. And you can pack it up in a small project with some scripts and send it our way. And we will then later pass it to the project. And yes, I see that you already share the Medium article. That Medium article shows you how step by step how you could do that. And you have more questions how to POC your buglets, you can just jump into Immunefi Discord and ask question there. We have really helpful community that are really passionate about security, so you will definitely get help there.
Great, awesome. And I guess all of them like already familiar about Immunefi's Discord. So, but yes, I will add a link to the Discord community as well, so that they can quickly hop in. And so with that, I would like to thank you, Adrian, for coming up to UnChained and sharing your valuable information and knowledge with all of us. And I know it was pretty early for you in your time zone, but thank you so much for managing.
Such a big mug of coffee really helps.
Yeah, we can see that, right? Yeah, we can see that.
And I really thank you for invitation and for the opportunity to speak to all of you guys. So thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, totally our honor. And with that, I would like to say thanks one more time, and hoping to see you in another event. Right?
Yeah, I will be sticking around now as an commenter on the chat. So yeah,
For sure.
Mohammed, be careful
Yes.
about my question.
Yeah, got it. All right. So, Arnim, you can hop in. And yep. Thank you so much, Adrian. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Thank